Yeah, I saw in your article that things like E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, Brucella abortus, and another one which name I cannot barely pronounce,
Campylobacter. Yep.
there we go. I knew if I did
Yep.
the first syllable, you'd pick it up. These are according to the report that or your article, you talk about the fact that these can include diarrhea, the symptoms thereof, diarrhea, stomach cramping, vomiting, and can lead to even more serious complications. And then you go on to describe some of them. We're not even talking about something that's just a matter of preference. This is a matter of public health. And so I'm
Absolutely.
wondering, where is the drive for this embrace of raw milk coming from? I feel like I've seen it in social media spaces. My medical professionals have never spoken with me about, well, first
Yeah.
of all, I'm a black woman. So, I'm lactose intolerant already. So we're already starting at a problematic space, as are many people of African descent. But where is this drive, this push for raw milk coming from?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. You're absolutely right. It's coming from social media. It's coming from kind of this wellness industry, which is really
Hmm.
this $5.6 trillion global market that
I'm sorry, what?
really, yeah, it's really lucrative. The wellness industry, which includes dietary supplements, it includes all your, your unregulated, unapproved health tests, all those health, the apps that have like, oh, test your blood sugar and do this, the ones that aren't actually FDA approved. All the other like wellness interventions, like your red light therapy and your saunas and your plunge pools and things like that. So it's a big bucket, but it's been very popularized by, kind of the alternative health sphere, people who
Hmm.
often suggest that maybe we don't want to trust, science-based medicine, and that, it often goes hand in hand with some other like rejection of science, often a distrust of federal or regulatory agencies. But because it has no oversight or regulation, that
Hmm.
market has exploded. And so you
Wow.
often see fad diets going along with it. And so, we've had this kind of expansion of the original like anti-vaccine dietary supplement that actually was very left leaning once upon a time. And now
Huh.
you actually have an arm of it that's very far right leaning. And so you have this convergence within this wellness industry. And so you have this brosphere or this manosphere that is
Wow.
vocal proponents of, this, well, this is how our ancestors ate, this is the carnivore diet, this is this, we don't want to interfere with nature. We want to do things,
Hmm.
in a more primeval way. And that's really kind of given this legitimacy to this raw milk. And there's no there's no reason to do it. There's a lot of people that will make claims about supposed benefits, but there's no actual science behind those supposed benefits. The pasteurization doesn't deteriorate the nutrients in milk. It doesn't, alter the benefits you're getting if you choose to consume milk. The only thing it does is it increases your risk that you're going to get a serious illness.
But it also makes you manly. It makes you
Definitely. You're
it makes you feel
super
manly.
manly if
Yes.
you are, I don't know if I can swear on here. I don't even know if it
It's
counts.
Serious
If
XM,
you're,
totally.
yeah, if you're shitting your brains out, that I don't know if
Mm.
that makes you manly. But often when I try to debunk this, people are like, well, who cares? Let them drink the raw milk if they want to drink the raw milk. And I think that speaks to a bigger issue in that, we had this federal regulation on pasteurization, but often we see individual states who pass laws that kind of undermine those guide
Right.
rails.
Yep.
And what ended up happening is that there are certain states that now permit the sale of raw milk, and there are no safety regulations. So they are not required to
Wow.
test for the presence of these pathogens.
What?
Um, People can essentially do like farm trading, where if you know somebody that has a dairy farm, you can go get milk for free even. And so it's not just impacting one person, because if states or farms are loosening their safety criteria for processing milk, that can spill over into other foods they're producing, even if some of them are, say, pasteurized milk, or, you know, parents are feeding it to their kids, and kids are at highest risk for these types of foodborne, milk-borne illnesses. And so,
Mhm.
we don't live in a bubble. So what one person does when it comes to public health, that impacts other people. And when
Yeah.
we talk about some of these pathogens, these are shed in bodily fluids. That's part of the evolution of why they lead to these symptoms, diarrhea and vomiting, because if you're spraying it out of your body, that's a way to transmit to the next host, right?
Oh my
And
God.
so that means that if we have an increase of spread of these, that means more people might be potentially exposed either within a household or through
Sure.
water supplies and so on. And so, yeah, I mean, it would be great if you could say, hey, well, you want to make these bad decisions and, you're going to run that risk yourself. But it affects our whole society, and particularly in the US. And I know we've talked, there's been a lot of chatter about the really dysfunctional structure of the for-profit healthcare industry. But the way that our current insurance programs work is that we collectively bear the health costs of other people. And so if people are getting sick because they're choosing to drink raw milk for no reason, and they are hospitalized because they get E. coli 0157H7 and they have kidney failure, well, then other people are going to have to cover that cost through their insurance as well.
I got to be honest with you. I love a good set of vitamins. I've got my vitamin C, my acidophilus, my propolis, my oil of oregano. I mean, I've got it. I come from a very naturopathically inclined family, and my audience knows when we vaccinated our kids, we did it on a slower process. We had a great pediatrician who worked with us. I love a good naturopathic reality as much as the next person. And I was joking a little bit, being a little tongue in cheek when I'm talking about the manosphere because you're manly. But there's also a trend within the trad wife tradition that we are seeing. So we've got the masculine side of it, but then we've got those who are embracing a very domesticated, traditional. And I always put an asterisk by tradition because it depends on whose tradition you're talking about, right? Like not all of us come from traditions where the women were just in the household, submitting to whomever was in power. That is a tradition, but it's not a universal tradition. But we're seeing this sort of take over the wellness space. I had no idea the wellness space was that lucrative. But I get how one could easily slip into a reality where you are far more susceptible to some messaging behind really harmful products. I cannot tell you how many Facebook groups I joined as to find out recipes for, of course I've got time to cook, God help me, but like recipes for whatever. And then slowly I would see the Facebook groups kind of shift to being much more political. And I now know that this was a really part of a lot of the ways in which misinformation and disinformation campaigns operate. They would infiltrate these spaces, but I could totally see how somebody, after developing, trusting relationships, and I guess I should put trusting in air quotes because you're trusting strangers on the internet, Facebook groups or not. And so it makes sense to me that people are susceptible to this. But I think what raises the level of concern is that now people who are being nominated to hold positions of real power in political spaces in the next administration are also very much proponents of some of these non-scientifically based approaches to wellness that can end up really hurting people. What are some of your concerns about the fact that we've got an RFK Jr. who is now being put up as somebody who's going to have the ability to dictate what our public policy looks like on a national scale? So it won't even be these state by state approaches. We're talking national approaches to what is gross. I'm sorry, y'all. It's gross. It's just gross.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's very insidious, and it really exploits this desire to take control of your health, right? Everybody wants to live a healthy life, and messaging that really elicits these strong emotions, usually worry or fear or anxiety, or, the ones that are more associated with this like fight or flight response.
Yeah.
Those tend to go viral compared to like, no, you don't actually have to throw away your cutting boards. It's okay. That risk is really minuscule, but if someone's telling you that all these things are causing cancer or this or that, it becomes paralyzing for people that, they're not a scientist on their day-to-day basis. So they don't have the time or the skill set or even the, desire to pick through what's being mischaracterized. And that's really what the wellness industry leverages, because they don't have the guardrails that science-based medicine does, where, we have moral obligations and legal obligations where we cannot say certain things, whereas they don't really have to adhere to that. So they can make these really appealing claims that don't actually exist in reality. And so when you see this being legitimized and amplified on a national level, particularly for someone who's going to essentially control all of the health and science agencies and
Right.
their funding and where their
Right.
funding goes, there's a concern that we're going to see the legitimization and the promotion of these things simultaneously with more rollback on the regulatory oversight that actually does monitor the safety of our food supplies and
Right.
surveil for food outbreaks and things like that. And so you could imagine that we might see more of this. We might see more acute illnesses. We might see increased healthcare costs.
Mm.
And the thing that is most frustrating is that, you know, the motto, right? Make America healthy again, right? It grabs people's attention because of course people want to be healthy, but RFK Jr. in particular has a 30-plus-year history of actually doing things that do the opposite. And it's not just the
Right.
vaccine. He has scared people away from safe and nutritious fresh fruits and vegetables because he was a lawyer and made a lot of money on lawsuits, scaring people about conventional produce, which is half the price and totally safe. And what ends up happening is that the lower income people are affected the most. People who live in food deserts are affected the most. And 90% of Americans aren't eating enough fiber and fruits and vegetables. So if we want to improve health, like we should be focusing on those things, not talking about unsuppressing raw milk or, you know, vilifying a single food ingredient, because those are the things that are not going to help health outcomes. It's improving access to nutritious and affordable foods and encouraging people to do these things that actually have data behind it. And so, you know, I think you could kind of use your imagination to envision the worst case scenarios, but I certainly could envision a world in which, you know, we cut funding for food safety inspections.
Oh my
And, you know,
God.
we know that he doesn't really believe that infectious diseases are a problem. So it's not just the foodborne stuff, it's the person to person illnesses. We could see further declines in vaccines. We could see, you know, this kind of snowball effect where, you know, now we're seeing increased illness, increased death,
Mm.
you know, and we already, you know, see a lot of poor health outcomes simply because of wealth inequality in our society. And this would certainly exacerbate that.